Hello everybody, this video is meant for you to go over the work that you did on practice problems 1 through 4 and make any corrections that you need to the problems that you did. Alright, looking at problem number 1, we have student council renting a tent for $350, so that's the amount of money that they can spend. And then they are going to have students and others attending a fair, and they're going to be taking money in to help pay for some of the events, including this tent. The students that are attending are each going to pay 50 cents. So for every student that attends, they're going to pay 50 cents. And anybody else who attends is going to have to pay $2.25, and again, that's each. So we're going to need to multiply the number of people attending times the price that they have to pay in order to see how much money student council will take in. And in this case, student council needs to cover the cost of the tent. So they need to take in ticket sales, enough money to cover that $350 cost of the tent. And it's okay if they take in more money, they just need to take in at least that much. So what we need to do is figure out how much money they are going to take in and how we calculate that. Since each student is going to pay 50 cents and there are 200 students that are coming, we would multiply 200 students times the price of 50 cents, which in dollars would be $0.50 or half of a dollar. So that's the money that the students will spend. So I'm just going to label that student cost. If we add that now to the cost of the other attendees are going to pay $2.25 each, and the number of people attending is going to be represented by the letter A. So we would need to multiply A times 225. So A multiplied by 225 gives us the cost of the other attendees. And that's the money that student council will take in, and we need that money to cover the cost of the tent. So it needs to be either more than or greater than or equal to that $350. So the solution that we want to choose is solution, the second one here. 50 cents times 200 plus 2.25 times A has to be greater than or equal to the $350. All right, let's move on to number 2. In number 2, we have Louisa, who is going to be taking some horseback riding lessons, or at least purchasing some equipment. It says here that she is purchasing a new safety riding helmet, and that's going to cost her $125. So that's money that she's spending. That's $125 for that helmet. And then her lessons are going to be $20 per lesson. So for each lesson, she's going to spend $20. So we're going to need to multiply 20 times the number of lessons to get the total amount that she's spending on her lessons. She cannot spend more than $800. So she can spend less than $800 or equal to $800, but she cannot go over $800. So we're first going to write this inequality to represent the horseback riding expenses. And so the expenses, that's the money she's spending. So we're going to start out with $125 for the helmet. And then she also has added to that expenses for her lessons, and that's $20 times the number of lessons. And in this problem, I don't see where it says what to use for lessons, so I'm going to say let x equal the number of lessons, and we'll use x. So let x equal number of lessons that Louisa takes, and so if we multiply $20 times x, we get the total amount of money that she is spending on her lessons. So this is the cost of lessons. So total expenses then, total expenses is going to be the cost of the lessons added to the cost of the helmet. And that number cannot be over $800. It can be equal to 800, and it can be less than 800. Cannot be more than 800. So there's our inequality, and that takes care of part A, our inequality to represent the expenses for the year. Now it says find the maximum number of writing lessons she can afford to take this year. Number of lessons is X, so we are going to solve for X. And we want to solve for X when we are, if we can, equaling $800, or as close to $800 as we can get without going over 800. So in order to solve, I'm going to rewrite my equation here so that I can see it a little bit more clearly, and we're just going to solve for X. So I'm going to subtract 125 from both sides of my inequality, and we get 20x is less than or equal to 675. And then we will need to divide. Now be careful because we are dividing now, so we need to pay attention. If our dividing is by a negative, we will need to flip our inequality. Since we're dividing by a positive 20, we do not need to flip our inequality, and we get x is less than or equal to 33.75. Now, Louisa cannot take 33.75 lessons. The most she can take is 33. She can't go to 34 or she'll be spending over $800. So the answer to part B is Louisa can afford 33 lessons. All right, moving on. In number 3, Elena must have an average of at least 90. So when we say at least 90, we can be equal to 90 and we can be more than 90. So really we can be equal to or more. Having trouble writing here. Let's see if this will work. So equal to or more than but not less than 90. So she needs this 90 or better in order to compete in this math Olympiad. Her current math test scores are given to us. Looks like she's got a couple grades in the 80s and then a couple in the 90s and one exactly 90. And that's on the first 5 tests. We want to know what's the minimum score she must get on the 6th test to get her average of 90. And we can't round up to get a 90. It has to be a 90.0 or higher. So what we need to remember is how we find the average of any scores. So let's just review that part first of all. To find the average, and since we're going to be finding the average of 6 test scores, we'll talk about finding the average of 6 numbers. What we would need to do is add up our 6 numbers, or sum them up. And then whatever we get for that total sum, we would divide by the number 6. And that would equal our average of those 6 numbers. So in this case, we have some math scores that we would need to add up. We would be adding the 81, the 85, the 91, the 97, the 90, and I don't know yet what the 6 score is. We need to figure out what that 6 score needs to be. So we're going to let x represent that 6th score. So I'm going to say plus x, and I need a let statement. So we're going to say let x equal the score on the 6th test. So once I add all of that up, we would need to divide that total by the number 6. And we want that average number to be at least 90. So it can be greater than 90 or it can be equal to 90. So what I will do now is I will take those first 5 scores and figure out what those numbers are added together and simplify that part. When I do that, I get 444. So in the numerator, we have 444 plus my x over 6 has to be greater than or equal to 90. Now I have one of those fractional equations, and the way that we solve those, remember we want to multiply every term by our common denominator, or our least common multiple of the denominator. In this case, it's going to be 6, so I'm going to multiply each term by 6. And when we do that, these two 6's will cancel out to become 1, and I'll get 1 times 444 plus x, which is just 444 plus x, and that will be greater than or equal to 90 times 6 is 540. So now we can solve this, subtracting 444 from both sides. And we get x, I'm going to continue this over here, x is greater than or equal to 96. So Elena must get a 96 or higher I'm going to say at least a 96 on test number 6 in order for her overall average to be 90. That I think is one of the tougher questions on this unit. Alright, our last problem. Alexander rents a booth and he's going to sell some graphic novels. He has to pay a fee for the booth of $50. And when he makes each novel, that is also going to cost him some money. Each novel is going to cost $5.25. So the total cost of all his novels is going to be the number of novels he produces times the $5.25. Now he's going to sell these novels and get in some money. Each novel he's going to sell for $12.95. So we're going to write an inequality to represent the number of graphic novels he must sell in order to make a profit. In order to make a profit, that means he needs to get more money in than he spends in his costs. We are going to let x equal the number of novels. And that x is going to be multiplied in 2 places. One by the amount that it costs him to make each novel as part of the expenses, and once by the $12.95 to show us how much money he's going to get in. So let's look first at part A, writing our inequality to represent the number he must sell to make a profit. Alright, so his profit is going to be, or the money that he gets in is going to be $12.95 times the number of novels he sells, because each novel brings in $12.95. We want that to be more than what he spends or what his expenses are. So in order to make a profit, what he takes in must be greater than what his fees are. So now on the other side of this, I'm going to put his fees. He has a booth rental fee of $50. I'm going to label that booth rental. And he just has to pay that one time. And then he has to pay $5.25 for every novel that he makes because that's what it cost him to make it. So we multiply $5.25 times our number of novels. And let me just label that. This is the cost to make X novels. And over here, this $12.95X is the profit, or the money he takes in. I don't want to actually call that profit because we have to subtract the expenses to get profit. This is the money received for X novels. And that is our inequality that we can use. Now in part B, we need to solve this inequality. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it in B and then solve for X. So 1295X has to be greater than 50 plus 5 25X's. And we need to get our X's on the same side, so I'm going to subtract 525X's from each side. And when we do that, we get 7.7X's greater than 50. We are going to divide by 7.7. Since we are dividing by a positive number, we can keep our inequality sign the same, and we get X is greater than 6.4935. Now, Alexander cannot produce 6.4935 novels. We want our number of novels to be greater than that. So the next number that is greater, that he can make, greater than 6.4 would be 7. So we're going to say Alexander must sell 7 novels to make a profit. Alright, that's it. Make sure you make corrections to your work and keep that handy. Have a great day, everybody.